the true secret that we all struggle to believe is that most people actually are craving more connection. The research says this is so. And so it's so much easier to feel confident and to like keep those conversations going, or even start those conversations when you know, like, oh, they maybe are looking for connection too. It's okay for me to like start something. They're not going to be annoyed by that. They're going to welcome it.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Hey everyone, did you know that dozens of studies have shown that people who have lasting, meaningful connections live longer, have less health problems, and are overall mentally happier? Well, today's guest is going to help us dig into how to create meaningful mom connections. It's Emily Siegel. She is the podcast host of The Connected Mom Life. And she talks all about connection. And I will tell you, the two questions I get the very most is, how do I make meaningful connections, making friends, and how do I make money online? So I'm trying to help you with both of those things today. And if you are looking for a community, I would love for you to join me on social, on Instagram at Call Me CEO Podcast, or on Facebook. We have a group there as well at facebook.com/groups/Call Me CEO Podcast. I would love to create opportunities for you to create meaningful connection. Let's dive into this episode so we can hear more about it. Today is very special. I say that a lot, but this time it's a really unique day because we're going to be talking to Emily Siegel about how we actually create connections that matter in real life as mothers. Your everyday mother's bestie. Mother's Day is coming up. That must be why that came out of my mouth. But Emily, I was just saying before we came on the line today that I get two questions over the past 10 years I've been creating content online. Number one is, how do I make money from home? And I help people with that. And number two is, how do I make friends? It is a question that so many people are dealing with, and there's so much loneliness, and I cannot wait to dive into this with you today. So thank you so much for being here, and please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Emily, and I am the founder of The Connected Mom Life, which is a podcast and a community that is essentially dedicated to helping you not mom alone. Because I think we all become mothers and we're told about these villages, and people say, yeah, you need a village. And it's like, oh, okay. So does that just happen? And then it doesn't. And then you're like, oh, there must be, okay, there's something wrong with me. Like, I don't know what's going on, but like, man, this is hard to do alone. And so I am just so happy to be encouraging and supporting moms to really seek out their villages and stop doing mom life alone. Hard enough in general. And then to do it alone is like a whole other layer of hard. So would love to see, on a mission to see that come to an end.
I love that. Take us back into the journey of how you decided that this was the niche that you wanted to focus in on as you started a podcast and then switched gears. Tell us a little bit about how that happened and why this topic means so much to you.
Yeah. I started a podcast a couple of years ago, specifically for corporate moms. I just felt like there wasn't enough content for working moms who were just like doing all the things and like actually liking their career too. I feel like there's a lot of conversation about sometimes how to get out of your 9-to-5. And I was like, can we talk also about like some of the nice things about having a 9-to-5 and, being a mom and what that can look like. And it's hard, but like, here's how we can manage through together. And that was, I still really care about that topic. I think what was hard for me was as I kind of got more and more embedded in the working mom space, there was so much pressure to talk about equal pay and just all these things that like were never really my driving forces for having this conversation. I was more looking to create community and connection and just like knowing we're not alone in this working motherhood thing. And I have moved multiple times over the course of my life, 2 times without like college and like school and all of that. And I just found making friends as an adult was so stinking hard. And I was like always talking to other moms about like how hard it is to make friends. And so that's kind of like how I just felt pulled a little bit to shift the conversation of like, okay, we don't need to just talk about like the working mom life and like how we do it all, including like how we see our friends, but let's just talk about connection in general. And like, how do we all lead lives that where we just feel connected to ourselves, we feel connected to our people, we feel grounded, we're not running around like crazy people, and we truly feel like we have a support system in a village. And when I thought about what could I talk about all day, every day and never get bored, that was essentially what I could talk about all the time. And so that's kind of how I landed here.
I love that. I have always thought that so often as a married couple, you try to fulfill every need that your partner or your spouse has. And there are different parts of our personality, especially as women, that we need camaraderie. We need support. We need has this happened to you? And to hear that it's normal and that you have days of frustration and losing your mind. And then also, just that conversation and that girl talk that cannot be supplied by your significant other. And I think honestly that that's been one of the things that has helped strengthen my marriage the most, is when my husband and I have given each other that encouragement to seek connection with good girl friends, or for him, his good guy friends, to be able to like get out and act silly and connect and have that commiseration together. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. I think it's so healthy. I personally think like the more healthy you are in like all of your relationship spaces, just the better you're going to show up in each of those spaces. And for sure, like I talk with moms all the time who really resonate with like, they just think, oh my gosh, it's just like, yeah, I do want friends, but I'm also just so busy. And like, okay, my kids, my husband, partner, that's enough for now. Like that's a lot of connection right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, but you're definitely, it's like this lie we try to tell ourselves, like, okay, no, this will be fine. This will be enough. Like, I love these people. Like, these are my people. Like, this should be enough, but it isn't. It just isn't. We feel like there's a part of us that isn't fully seen or understood when we only rely to be connected with our partner and our kids, because at the end of the day, like they can't see all of us, they can't see all of our facets. And so I think finding those connections in multiple areas of our life, including like really quality, good female mom friendships, can just be so restorative and life-giving. And then of course, like there's actually like research studies that show you like how powerful friendship can be on your health. But like, we'll just assume we know all of those, but like just in general, like it's, how do you feel when you come home from like an amazing chat with a girlfriend? You just feel like lit up. You feel like you're on cloud nine. You just feel like the kids can be extra whiny tonight and it's not going to set me off. There's just so much like life you can get from that commiseration. So yeah, totally agree with you.
I love it. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. How do we make the time to create meaningful connection? And also, maybe this is a follow-up question, what do we do when we're feeling shy? Because it can be really scary to put yourself out there. So what would you say for someone who's listening and is thinking, I really crave those meaningful connections? Where do I even start?
Yeah. I mean, you hit on like two of the like biggest, the hardest pieces. Time for us moms, which is like so daunting, like to think about adding one more thing to our plate. And then two, like the nervousness, the awkwardness, all the mind games that come up. Like those are two really big and really real hurdles. And so oftentimes I find it's helpful to spend, time helping supporting moms through both of those, like the mindset piece and just kind of digging in and understanding what feels hard. For some moms, they feel like, oh, I'm going to be judged. Some feel like I just have never really been great at friendship. Some are just like, oh, I hate the awkwardness. So sometimes it's just like initially figuring out, okay, what feels hard for you about it? Because sometimes that can help kind of think of some different strategies. But in terms of like, you need friends, you want to kind of make the space and the time. A lot of times what I do help moms think about is, okay, like, what are you craving most? Like, what do you think would help fill you up the most? Is it like one or two friends with kids the same age? Is it just like someone to text here and they're just like kind of thinking about like, what do I actually want? Because we're all scrolling social media and we're seeing what everybody else has or what we think they have. And sometimes we just need to take a step back and think, okay, what am I actually like really craving right now in terms of friendship? And then that can lead you to really think about, okay, where am I going to most likely find it? Because again, like the time is so limited. Like I work with moms to put together a strategy. Like you're only going to focus on 1 to 3 places max, or 3 groups or 3 people at a time ever, because you're just going to stretch yourself so thin and you're going to like just constantly feel like it's not working or you're not getting any traction if you're like trying all the different places all at once. So that's really where I encourage moms to start, is think about, okay, what am I really craving? And then thinking about, okay, well, if I'm really craving a mom friend who has kids the same age, where am I likely to find someone like that? Mm-hmm. And then from there, thinking about strategies. So a lot of times that might be daycare. Like you're going to find other working moms at daycare or other stay-at-home moms, at a mom's group. And so kind of deciding, where am I going to put my energy and my effort? And then kind of like moving forward with that plan, and then not stressing about all the other connections that you're not necessarily investing in. I think sometimes we have all this guilt about like, oh shoot, I saw that mom and I could have had the conversation but I couldn't think of what to say. And it's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like choose your like 1 to 3 things you're going to focus on for just the next 3 months. And like, then you can just like not stress about all the other potential interactions that come your way that you don't necessarily take advantage of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. I think that there have been times, and I am an extrovert by nature. So this is something that for me, if I see someone at the park and our kids are similar ages, or even if they're not, I'll say something like, oh, your boy is so cute. How old is he? And then they'll say, oh, they're 4 or whatever. And then I'll say, oh, my son is that age too. That's so fun that the kids become instant friends. I love watching them do this and that. Do you guys live close by? And then it just kind of creates this thing. And I have legit met and kept friends that I've met at the park. It's kind of like dating in a way. It's kind of weird that you're like, can I have your number? But more often than not, it's more comfortable if it's someone that I see often, like it's someone that I see at preschool drop off, or or someone else's case, daycare drop off every day, that it creates this familiarity of like, oh, I know who they are. I know they live somewhat close by and we have something in common. Our kids are the same age. So it's like a good starting ground. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. And in my experience, so I have kids, they're 8 and 5 now. I found making friends when they were little harder, particularly because I was working. And let me say it, when I first had a kid, we had just moved, so I knew no one. And I joined a mom's group, like a mom's workout group. And I just went every day. I wasn't even there to work out. I literally was just like trying to find other people that looked like they had kids the same age as mine. And that was great. But then I went back to work and I'm like, whoa, this is a whole new level of hard for finding connections with moms, even at that daycare drop off, because everybody was like stressed trying to get to work. Yeah. And then even at like pickup, it was like, everybody was stressed trying to get home to make dinner.
Totally.
And so I kind of came up with the strategy there of, eventually I could kind of like get a sense of who they were hanging out with, or even the teacher would tell me that. And then I sent like little notes home and just said, hey, like, Ami's mom, Robbie either talks about Ami all the time, or the teachers say that they're hanging out a lot. I'd love to get together for a park play date some weekend. Here's my phone number. And that was huge for making daycare friends. And I'm also like you at the park. I do the same thing because I was really, strategic about like, I'm going to hang out at the same park close to my house all the time. because I'm more likely to meet people that actually live nearby. And like proximity is huge in terms of accelerating a friendship and just like having more opportunities. So I try to just like keep putting myself in those spaces. And I love that you just asked for the number. I tell moms, I'm like, you can ask for a number on a first meeting without it being weird. And they're like, you can? I'm like, yes. And I'm like, here's the formula. You do exactly what you did. You're like, oh, it's, you mentioned something that you connected on. Like I always like to say, oh, like coming to the park is always more fun when there's other kids here. And then I say, do you want to exchange numbers? I can let you know the next time we're coming to the park. And if it works for you, great. And what I love about that is like in the middle of this little formula, you ask for the number, but right away you use like give a really low pressure example of how you're going to use it. So it doesn't feel like and you want to be my best friend and talk on the phone every day. Like, that's not what I'm not asking for your number for that reason. I'm just like, hey, like that was fun that they played together and we didn't have to be, constantly doing all the things. If you want to recreate this, I'll let you know the next time we come. No pressure.
Yeah. So, I love that formula. And I think that it's oftentimes, more often than not, someone in the shoes opposite you wants the same thing you do, but they're afraid to ask for it. Like it's putting yourself out there. It's being the first one to make the move, which is always a risk. But the worst thing that can happen is that they say, oh, that's okay. Which in that case, it's like, okay, then you're not a good fit and that's fine. But I love that you are saying, let's meet at a common ground where it's a non-threatening scenario, where it's like, a park where you both go to and you don't have to worry about having people in your house if you are worried about not knowing them well or whatever that reason might be. So I think that that is super helpful. What would you say to moms who have older kids? Tell me why you think it's easier, because in a way, I think it can be a little bit harder, because now I have children who are junior high age and they're teenagers and they're busy, and I am running in the car all the time. I'm like, I don't have the chance to see anyone. So what would you say to someone in that scenario?
Yeah, I think it is leaning a little bit on your kids to see where are they making connections with their friends, and then, seeing what opportunities you have to like connect with the mom or dad. Like for now, like right now, my kiddo, my 8-year-old, like made a neighbor friend and, is just texting with the mom because eventually they like want to go into each other's houses. And there's just also like a level of safety that you want to feel comfortable with. And a lot of times, like, I just want to have a conversation with that parent. And so sometimes that can even be in for like, oh, hey, like, I love that the boys are hanging out right now. So fun. Robbie's been asking to go inside. Would you like want to meet in the driveway for drinks like later this week or something, just to like meet? And, they're becoming friends, would love to get to know you too, just to kind of get in there. And then, you're probably driving your kids around to different activities and sports. Sometimes you're watching them. So sometimes it's just even like coming in with the like strategies of, okay, now I happen to be sitting next to these people watching a baseball game or, doing this. How can I take advantage of the fact that we're all there together? And I have the knowledge that I know we're all craving connection. Some of them don't know that. Some of them think that I'm set on friends. Like, that's the thing we always think. We're like, oh, everybody else is good. It's just me feeling this way. And the secret is that that's not true. Like you said it yourself, the true secret that we all struggle to believe is that most people actually are craving more connection. The research says this is so. And so it's so much easier to feel confident and to like keep those conversations going, or even start those conversations when like, oh, they maybe are looking for connection too. It's okay for me to like start something. They're not going to be annoyed by that. They're going to welcome it.
Yeah. I'm curious if you have ever coached anyone through how to end a friendship that is toxic. Do you talk to people about that a lot? Or I guess probably not a lot, but have you dealt with that sort of thing?
Yes and no. I definitely would say there are moms that I've supported that, are just realizing they have friendships in their life that are just maybe not serving them very well. They're not getting a lot from it. And so usually I don't like to tell people what to do. I'm probably just like said all these things about what you should do. But when it comes to like letting go of a friendship, I will coach moms through thinking through that process of like reflecting on, okay, what next time you hang out with this person, when you leave, when you're done with that, how do you feel afterwards? I do a friendship audit with a lot of moms. And as part of that audit, they list out different connections in their life, people that they consider to be friends at different kinds of like depths. And then kind of once they have everybody listed, one of the questions you go through is you reflect on how positive do you feel about that connection? Are you always walking away from that connection feeling down, feeling depleted? Like ultimately our friends are supposed to lift us up. They're supposed to be life-giving. And obviously there's going to be ebbs and flows and people are going to be going through things and you might have to be giving them more in certain seasons than they're even physically capable or emotionally capable of giving you with whatever they have going on. Mm-hmm. But you just want to pay attention to like, does that season ever end? And if not, one, it doesn't mean that you have to say goodbye to that friend, but the reality is that, and this sounds a little harsh, but like if they're not actually giving you anything, it's not necessarily a friendship. Like that's a charity case that you've decided to keep investing your time in, which you can absolutely do, but also know your time's limited. And so I just want you to be really clear on who you're spending it on and whether that is a good investment for you. And it sounds like, well, honestly, even as I'm saying this, it all sounds very harsh. I don't say it fully this way as I'm working with a mom through it, but like, I really do challenge them of like, your time is limited. And I'm not saying, cut them out, but maybe you do want to look at how much time you're truly investing and how much headspace and emotion you're putting into it. And maybe just create some new boundaries for yourself.
Yeah. I like how you talked about it being that time is an investment and that we all, and the truth of the matter is we could have hundreds of people that we love and we want to be friends with. But when it comes down to it, you do not have the time resource to invest as much as a friendship needs in all those hundreds of relationships. You really have to pick at the end of the day, which can be for some really challenging. And for a lot of us, it can even be hard to make really meaningful time for even just two, and I think that we need to give ourselves permission to do an audit. I think that that's such an interesting concept of, really analyzing what we're giving and what we're receiving and how that's either adding or taking away from our life's happiness.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we're currently moving from our state that we're in, and we're going back to kind of our hometown. So we have some established connections there. And I've been really thoughtful about how I want to end our time well here and like how I kind of want to not necessarily close out friendships, but like say goodbye well is kind of the phrase I've been using. And I just saw a girlfriend that I hadn't seen in maybe a year or two. We've only lived here 8 years. And she's one of those people that I've always known. I'm like, man, if we lived closer, we would be best friends. And the reality is that we just don't. It's too hard to get together. There's just too many kind of like barriers in our way to having the type of friendship that we know is possible. The conditions just weren't ripe for it. And so luckily we both just have an appreciation for each other. But it's kind of bringing some of that thought process to our connections and to our friendships. And I just had coffee with another friend who, again, I had not seen in years. We've only lived here 8 years and, wanted to see her and catch up before we officially left and finally making the time because I'm leaving, and it was so interesting. We Voxered a little bit after, which is like a voice app. And she was like, I'm having some regret over, our friendship was taking off, but then, we kind of like, there were some moves and just like some stressors in both of our lives. And it just kind of like, it faded and it shifted. And I didn't have any hard feelings about it. I didn't think she had any hard feelings about it either. Honestly, it was more stressors on her end. And she was just feeling so apologetic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, like I am so grateful for our friendship. I so love and appreciate you. And also just like, remember that was a crazy time. Like, no, there are no hard feelings. There are like, it is what it is. And like, I'm just so grateful that we can pick back up or, just get back together and pick back up where we left off. But like, yeah, I think sometimes we get so, worked up about the ways people are or not investing. But the reality is that we only have so much time, and we can always appreciate people and know that like there could be more if the conditions were slightly different, which is sad. There's definitely a sadness to that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think of when we were in, school, and it was like in elementary, junior high, high school, college, you live in this universe of friendship where it's like you have the same classes every day. You see the same people every day. You have hard trials you're going through together because you have the same assignments or the same social group or whatever it is. And then as an adult, that your universe totally changes, where it's like to be able to access those friends, you have to go to the outer space, really, because it's like you're kind of in this nucleus of your own world. And then you're like, okay, but what's out there? I need to bring some of that into my world. And one thing that you brought up that I really liked, and I wish, and maybe you'll know if I tell you, but there was someone that was doing a talk, and it was someone like Mel Robbins, but I don't think it was her. And she was saying something about you want to have people in your life who, if you imagine everyone as a candle and you all have a flame, that you want people in your life who are not candle blower outers. She said something like that.
Yes,
where it's like,
I know the podcast, or I know the person.
The reference. Yeah. Who is it?
Yeah. Brene Brown talked about that.
That's who it was. Yeah. I was like, okay, I know. I can't remember who it was. Yes, Brene Brown. And so I think that that's such a good visual for ourselves to think of. In the reference of Brene Brown, she was talking to children and saying, that you want to teach your children this, which absolutely you do. Yeah. But I do think that each of us does have that flame. And we're like, is that flame blown out? Or does it feel more alive after I'm with this person?
Yeah. I know as moms, like we are so crazy busy that like half the battle is just making space to like reflect on like, how am I even feeling about my friendships, and getting really clear on what feels really good about them right now and what's feeling hard about them. I think sometimes if we can create that space for ourselves, it's a lot easier to address what's feeling hard versus just letting the noise, just continue to come in and influence that for us. So yes, I loved that analogy that she shared of teaching our kids just to pay attention. That's so key to like, how is this person either enhancing my flame or diminishing it?
Yeah. I can think of, it's really interesting. And I learned this at a really early age, and I don't know where this came from or how it came to be, but I found that I've always felt like energy attracts energy. And so if you, I don't know if you have been around someone and you can just feel that they have like a lightness and a positivity and like a generosity about them in their energy, like in their aura. Yeah. I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but like legit, I have a sensor for that of like someone's energy. And I know almost immediately if we're going to be really good friends. And not that hasn't happened. I didn't automatically know, but usually I know pretty quickly if this is going to be someone that will be in my life for a long time or not. And I think that listening to your intuition and your gut of like, is this a person that you could really invest in, is worth taking the time to ask that question of ourselves and see if it's someone that lifts you up and makes you feel like you are of value, or maybe that makes you feel funny. Like I have certain friends who, when I'm with them, they make me feel so funny because they like think I'm hilarious, where other people make me feel smart, and other friends of mine make me feel really listened to. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about different relationships, is they can bring out different parts of you.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of paying attention to energy and intuition and like, are you feeling this? The only caveat I sometimes give is if I'm working with a mom and I can just tell she's carrying a lot of baggage around friendship, and has a lot of insecurity around female friendship. She's maybe been really burned in the past.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that intuition, we may have to work through a little bit, because she'll tell me stories about, conversations she's had with other moms. And she's like, I don't know, I just don't think she's my person, or she seemed too judgy. And I'm like, okay, let's unpack this a little bit, just to understand, was this truly an energy vibe, or like, were you influencing that in any way with the energy you were bringing? I know I often tell the story when we moved the first time without kids or a dog, and I was trying to make friends without the context of school. And I thought it was so hard. I thought it was so hard to make friends. Everything I tried just didn't feel like it was really working. And I ended up reading this book. It was about a girl very similar in my situation. She's like, I'm just seeking my best friend forever in my new city. It's not like I don't have friends. I just don't have friends in this current city. And like, you start to feel like there's something wrong with you, of like, I don't know, everybody like lives in the city and they all have established friendships. I don't think they've got space for me. And that was basically the story I was telling myself, and I didn't realize it at the time. And so in hindsight, I know that in some of those interactions, I was bringing an energy of pre-rejection, of like, you're probably set. You're not that interested in me. You're just being polite. And so that's what I thought about so many of those connections. And then once I read this book, and I was like, learned that actually, no, people are really interested. I found myself in this book club in our condo. Like, we packed like 30 people into a 2-bedroom condo pre-COVID. And it was like, there were all these women there who did live in the same city their whole life. And they were like, no, I want to know my neighbors. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you want more friends, even though you technically have a lot of friends already. You have space for me. And that was just really powerful for me to understand, like, okay, no, people do have more space. And that story I'd been telling myself was not fully true. Some people might have been at capacity. There's always people that are at capacity, at certain times in their life. But for the most part, people are usually pretty open. And then I started walking around like everyone wanted to be my best friend. And oh my gosh, like, my connections exploded overnight because I was bringing a different energy. And so like, 100%, I think energy attracts energy. And that was when my circle exploded, was when I had an energy of like, we should be like, of course you want to be friends. Why wouldn't you want to be friends with me? And then like, for whatever reasons, it doesn't work out, but it's not because like they didn't necessarily want to be my friend, or like, it's just the timing wasn't right. The conditions weren't right, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much that you talked about that, because one of the questions I did have from the very beginning is, do you feel like to be able to create really great friendships, you have to create a really great friendship with yourself first? Because if that's not in place, then you will bring that energy of not feeling like you're worth the love or the connection or that friendship, which I think will kill it from the beginning, like just like you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a group for moms, and there's 2 pillars, and that we kind of like put our stake in the ground around our work. And it's first, like, knowing yourself so you can share yourself. And that's not to say that like, you can't we're all evolving. Like, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfectly healthy at any given time. Like, all the things, like, you can definitely have friends when you're not in a healthy state. But I do think the more you're just self-aware of yourself, what like fears and insecurities you carry that can sometimes influence your energy or influence the story you're telling in any given scenario, friendship or not.
Yeah.
I just think it is so much easier when you know yourself. It's so much easier to share yourself. It's so much easier to give grace to other moms. It's so much easier to not read in to like things that aren't anything. And just, so that's really what I like to focus on in my work with moms. It's not even always like, here, it is the how-tos of like, how to make friends, but I find that it's really that deeper inner work that actually makes it feel easier and more fun, and ultimately like more life-giving and authentic, in those actual interactions.
I love that so much. If someone's listening to that right now and they're starting to recognize maybe that within themselves, that they do need to invest time in themselves and create a greater connection to who they are, what are some best first steps that they could take in that regard?
Yeah, I think, we talked about this a little bit, but just even like stepping back, one of the questions I like to ask initially with moms is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about your friendships? Like 1 being like, oh my gosh, what friendships? And 10 being like, they're amazing. Like, why are we even talking about this? Of course they're great. And so, I'll say most moms say 5, like without a doubt. That's usually where everybody starts. And then I ask them, okay, if you were going to rate yourself a 6, what would change? And I think there's something so powerful about just naming, like, okay, like taking stock of truly like how you're feeling about your friendships and your connections and where that is. And then when you have like a slightly smaller understanding of what you're looking to change, then it is easier to understand, okay, like, how can I promote that? What can I do? Can I put myself out there? And, I'm just always that, in terms of like getting to know yourself, just follow your interests. If you're like, I'm always a huge fan of personality tests and tendencies and, just trying to understand what's making me tick at any given moment. But just, taking that pause to pay attention, just pay attention. That's like literally the first step in any self-awareness work, is just like paying attention to how I'm feeling. Maybe like, okay, I'm feeling this way. I wonder why. It's just continuing to reflect and try to understand that. And then always, if you have someone to process that with, that can help surface more things too. But yeah, I would say that first step is pay attention. How are you feeling? And if you want to explore that more, lots of resources that you can dive down into.
Well, I think that this has been an awesome conversation. I know that there is such a need for this. I feel like the pandemic had put us all into a tight little box where we were very much involved with ourselves and our families and our to-dos.
Mm-hmm.
And now it feels like the world is starting to expand again and to feel more expressive and connected. And I love that. So if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I need to take stock, where am I in my friendships? What do I need to do for myself? And how can I help and grow beyond that so that I can connect and really grow? And I just want to say thank you so much for being with us today. And please tell everyone where they can connect with you and hear your podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to support moms that are, just like feeling like friendship is harder than it probably should feel, And so all of my resources are on my website, theconnectedmomlife.com. There's lots of free supports, guides. Will give you scripts on how to talk to other moms to like cut the weirdness, and also cut to the chase, get out of the small talk zone, kind of some of those tangible, practical strategies. I have also a really helpful template on just even like finding the time and space for connection each month without constantly feeling like you're an event planner. And then also some different, courses if you're really kind of wanting to go deeper, some courses. And then would definitely invite moms to join our group. We call ourselves the Mom Friends. And it's a space where we're all, really investing in our local and real life circles, while at the same time investing in ourselves and kind of having like a small little online group where we can process things with in a really safe space before kind of going out into what feels a little scarier in our real lives.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for anyone that's listening, I hope you know you are worth taking the time to invest in yourself and in friendship, and it will change your life. So Emily, thank you so much for being my new friend. This has been such a fun conversation, and we'll see you all next time. Hey, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I am in a phase of my life where I do want something a little extra to make some money, I am now opening up my virtual assistant course, which is 60 Days to VA, where you can watch the courses at your own pace to have a business that you love at your own schedule, where you can still be at home with your kids, make money on the side, and it is in demand more than ever. I'm getting messages every single day from CEOs who are looking for reliable, knowledgeable,
incredible virtual assistants, and everyone that has gone through my program has loved it and turns out to be all of those things. Now, on the flip side, if you are a busy CEO or you have a business that is overwhelming you enough that you need help, reach out to me and I can individually talk to you and match you up with one of my virtual assistants and coach you through how to use a virtual assistant effectively. If either of those are something that you're interested in, please DM me at Call Me CEO Podcast on Instagram or email me callmeceopodcast@gmail.com. Let's help each other create a life that we love.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found this helpful, please subscribe and or come and talk to me on social media. I love to hear from you. DMs are always welcome. I want to hear about what meaningful relationships and friendships mean to you. And if you would like to be included in the newsletter, please go to Call Me CEO Podcast to find out how you can get weekly updates of our shows and free resources. You can also go to camillewalker.co to find more free resources to discover your why and creating more purpose in your life today.